Welcome back to my channel. For today's video I'm going to be sharing my research that I've been doing all about the different theories of attachments and the different aspects of childhood relationships from the moment of birth, and then how that develops as they grow a little bit older into young children rather than babies, and then continuing on as they develop into adulthood. That is what we're going to be looking at today. I've done a lot of research on this, I want to say, for the past week or so. It's a topic that I'm so interested in. I love just reading about how children understand and digest information, as they're a lot more intelligent than what a lot of people give them credit for. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is an introduction to attachment, aspects of childhood relationships from the moment of birth. Our lives thrive and develop through social interaction from the second that we're introduced into the world. Research shows that as newborns especially, the idea of building a social connection with those around us is not only expected, but also vital for our survival. Within our early years, we are entirely reliant on our spouses for necessities of life like protection, food and water, and this is a completely compulsory action if those new to the world wish to live. For new life to be successfully brought into the world and survive until one is confident enough that they can do so independently, several intricate behavioural patterns have to be showcased. Many know that a baby cannot survive on its own and that it is a part of a relationship. In this respect, human beings operate similarly to our animal counterparts. Bowlby and Ainsworth explain the 4 stages of attachment within our early lives. The first being pre-attachment, where the newborn child shows no preference to a certain person or caregiver for the first 6 weeks of their lives. Indiscriminate follows on from the pre-attachment weeks and continues on until the baby is approximately 7 months old. During this second phase, the youngster begins to show signs of attachment to one specific person. Between 7 months and 10 months, babies will begin the discriminatory segment, where they portray a strong attachment to one particular person, and finally, from 10 months onwards, the child will begin to develop attachments to other caregivers in the so-called multiple stage. John Bowlby explains the theory as a permanent and lasting connection between human beings. Usually the majority of infants fit into what's called secure attachment, approximately 60%, and the remaining fit into either ambivalent or avoidant attachment categories equally, 15% in each. Harry Harlow, a researcher who primarily showcased a keen interest in deprivation, explored attachment and separation in the years between the 1950s and the 1960s. One experiment in particular analysed newborn monkeys' behaviours when separated from their primary caregivers and cared for by 2 replacement wired monkey mothers. One held a bottle for nourishment and the other was only covered by a soft cloth. The newborns preferred to spend the majority of their time with the soft clothed wired monkey. However, they would go for a drink from the other when needed. The test proved that early attachment came from the need for comfort and protection, especially when the newborns were frightened or felt threatened. Within early stages of understanding attachment, it was described by many as simply a learned behaviour, because the main caregiver will care for the child and the child naturally begins to trust and rely on that person, forming the connection and attachment we would often see when a child is separated from their parents. This is widely understood and accepted as a whole by theorists. There are no doubts that all of our lives begin with a relationship, a bond, a connection, typically with our mothers, which then change over time into other forms of social attachments and relationships, like for example marital partnerships and friendships. It has been summarised that many children that have had poor mental health have become involved in a criminal behaviour and have suffered from inadequate parenting, particularly had not shown attachments in their early lives. Many researchers have understood the different possible outcomes of attachment in the early stages of life, one being that if a child is securely attached, they're more than likely to have a higher rate of confidence, self-esteem and self-reliance. It was also found that children who developed attachments in their early lives actually performed better in education, develop social relations easier, and are also less likely to suffer from the negative implications of mental health. However, unfortunately, those who do not have the opportunity to develop the trust personality trait through attachment in the early years, for example, those who have suffered from neglect, abuse, or have been placed in foster care or an orphanage, miss an integral part of their development through the lack of a quality caregiver, turning more often than not to criminal activity and suffering from poor mental health as a result. Issues can also occur with attachment when one is diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and other conditions like oppositional defiant disorder, typically due to neglect, fears from the past, or abuse. This is described as the internal working model. Through this particular theory, we understand that children develop specific perceptions of relationships based on what they occur in early life with their caregivers. Theorist John Bowlby quotes that no variables have more far-reaching effects on personality development than have a child's experiences with his family. For starting during his first months, his relationships with both parents, he builds up working models of how attachment figures are likely to behave towards him and in any of a variety of situations. And on those models are based all his expectations and therefore all his plans for the rest of his life, end quote. Also, Bowlby explains that a good enough mother will provide a child with fantastic communication skills, and a unique two-way bond will begin to naturally flourish, but will also never ever cater to the baby's needs immediately, allowing the child to understand the importance of patience and other traits. This, according to another theorist, Winnicott, will then turn into self-independence. Bowlby believed strongly that a mother who was immediately caring for their child's needs and smothering them were not in any way doing justice. Within the 1970s, psychologist Mary Ainsworth expanded massively on Bowlby's research with her strange situation theory, which expressed the effects of attachment specifically on behaviour. During an experiment of babies aged between 12 and 18 months, researchers discovered that when left alone, some displayed severe attachment behavioural patterns, whilst others showed ambivalent insecure or avoidant insecure attachment patterns. Then, in 1986, a fourth type of attachment came into view: disorganised insecure attachment, when people struggle to maintain relationships and deliver when it comes to socialising and education. The theories surrounding attachment can, however, also come with some issues. Theorists like Mary Ainsworth have come into controversy over the lack of individuality surrounding her experiments, as she often works with the assumption that all separations and reunions have the same meaning for all children from all cultures and backgrounds. In conclusion, theories surrounding the topic of attachment provide details of the interesting effects of separation, relationships, and then reunions through the eyes of children. Theorists prove that children not only develop preferences and attachments to certain individuals from an incredibly young age, but also that it isn't all about survival. Although our main goal is to successfully create new lives and provide them with food and drink when needed, among other necessities, our children also develop relationships with those they seek comfort and protection from. It is apparent that babies can understand who to go to for survival and who they could go to and rely on for comfort and other necessities through the studies of Harry Harlow and Mary Ainsworth, who delved deep into behavioural patterns which furthered John Bowlby's work. Through all of those researchers, it has become evident that our youngsters have the immediate understanding and mental capability to determine what role one plays in their upbringing. As an example, mothers can stereotypically be seen more as the survival caregiver who is able to breastfeed and who has physically birthed the baby, whereas fathers typically are viewed more as the protector. I would like to consider this the beginning of further research into attachment in children and babies, and look forward to taking part in further studies on this topic myself. So what do you think on all of this? Please let me know in the comments section down below. Do you agree with any specific theory of attachment here? Are you somebody who really pays attention to the kind of relationships that your child or others can develop? Let me know in the comment section down below. I find this so interesting to look into. I am so interested in childhood studies, as I've mentioned plenty of times here on this channel, so this was very interesting to me, and I hope that it was interesting to you. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, make sure to click on that subscribe button. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in my next video.